Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Stacy Bright. I'm a mental health trainer with ViaQuest Psychiatric and Behavioral Services, and I'll be guiding you through today's de-escalation training. Our objectives for this training are to enhance our understanding of the human behavioral responses during a crisis situation. That'll help us recognize how stress, trauma, and the environment affect behavior. We want to develop knowledge of effective crisis de-escalation strategies and interventions. We'll learn some evidence-based strategies to help manage escalating situations. And we'll understand how building trust and setting boundaries with residents can aid in de-escalation. And we'll do that. We'll explore the role that trust, rapport, and professional boundaries play in calming a crisis. And we want to learn to apply effective techniques in managing challenging behaviors. So we'll present some practical methods, including tips for verbal and nonverbal communication and body language awareness. Defining behavior and recognizing escalating behavior. So now we're going to be discussing how we, as caregivers and staff, can impact whether a situation escalates or de-escalates. Residents rely on us to be that calm in the storm when they're agitated, to be that safe person who will help and support them through their crisis. And always bearing in mind, our responses, how we react in the moment, can make the difference in a situation escalating further. We first need to understand that all behavior is a form of communication, and that's true for all of us. Think of a time when a partner or a family member did something that really made you mad. You reacted by giving them the silent treatment, huffing and puffing, slamming doors and cabinets. All of this communicating to the people around you that something has upset you without you ever having said a word. And additionally, behavior is a way to address unmet needs. Everybody has a need to feel safe and need to feel in control of their own life. As an example, both of those things may feel like they're in jeopardy for someone who is maybe new to a facility. They might be roommates with somebody they don't know or possibly don't even like, and they no longer have control over being able to come and go as they please or any control over their own schedules. So, what is a behavioral crisis? A general description of a behavioral crisis is a situation where a person's behaviors, their actions, their emotions, or their mental state become so overwhelming or disruptive that they pose a potential threat to the safety of themselves, others, or property. These behaviors are often a form of communicating or indicating an unmet need. Sometimes those behaviors can be disruptive to the point that the person is no longer able to function independently or to be able to take care of themselves. It doesn't do much good to stop a behavior, though, if we haven't figured out the underlying cause. What need is it meeting for that person? And there are too many causes to name, but some of the more common reasons that residents of long-term care may act out could be things like they're confused. Maybe they're feeling some discomfort or they're having pain. One could be hungry or thirsty and just not able to express those needs or feelings anymore. Not to mention those underlying medical issues like dementia or Alzheimer's. So the whole point of de-escalation is being able to support and help someone before they reach that crisis phase. When one's behavior is escalating and with an increased risk of harm to themselves, others around them, or to property, as caregivers, we must understand that it wasn't the actual event itself that caused them to become agitated. It's what they believe about that event that's causing the problem. And we call that the ABCs of escalated behavior. So, understanding that there is a strong relationship between our beliefs and emotions will help us when we're working to de escalate a situation. Our goal here is for you and the resident to learn and then know the difference between responding to a situation versus reacting to a situation. So, here we are comparing escalated behavior to a fire, right? Both share the same ingredients, so to speak. So, we start with A, that's our spark. What started the fire? That's our activating event. And then we add oxygen. That's our belief. That fuels the fire. And that brings us to fuel. That's what keeps the fire burning. And that's the consequential emotion. So A, activating event, B, belief, C is the consequential emotion from that belief. The A, or the activating event, is first. Now, an activating event is the trigger or the spark that started the fire. Activating events can be in the past, in the present, or anticipated. They can be real or imagined. And this is the objective What happened? An approach of curiosity can lend itself well to uprooting the activating event if it is not disclosed by the escalating person. B is the belief of the event, or the oxygen that feeds the fire. Belief is composed of a person's view or evaluation of an activating event. Belief is a reflection of a person's silent self-talk statements, and people continuously engage in an inner dialogue about what's happening around them. This factor can be relied upon in crisis intervention. And then we have C, the consequential emotion. That leads to the crisis behavior or the fuel of the fire. And one should take great care to verbally reflect and validate the consequential emotion of a person in crisis. Here, rapport is earned and alignment with that person's emotional pain or discomfort is achieved. A stress response is our body's reaction to a threat, real or imagined. It's our body's fight, flight, or freeze response that helps us respond to stressful or even life-threatening situations. It's our body's way of working to keep us safe in what we perceive as a dangerous situation. And the way each of us reacts or responds when we're triggered or upset is unique to us and to any previous experiences that we may have had. By understanding how our bodies respond to stress and then normalizing that stress response or how we react when we're responding to a crisis, that gives us the ability to respond and not react to a given situation. Anticipating triggers allows us to intervene or avoid those situations that may possibly escalate a resident. And some examples of the body sensations or stress responses experienced during a stressful event or a situation include, but are certainly not limited to, having tunnel vision or hearing loss, diminished cognition and working memory, vasoconstriction, that shaky feeling that we get, that jittery sensation, time distortion, just to name a few. So imagine that this is what residents experience when they are escalating. Anticipating these things allows us to better support them because we then understand how they're feeling in that moment. Next, we have a brief video to encourage us to be mindful of the kind of support someone may need from us. We don't always have to try to fix everything.
It's just, there's all this pressure, you know? And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me and I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head, and it's relentless. And I don't know if it's gonna stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever gonna stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there...
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing...
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
Yeah, see, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See,
out.
you're not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just, sometimes it's like there's this achy, I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
That sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Come on. If you would just...
Don't.
Try to see things my...
So it's not always about fixing a situation, right? When somebody is upset, there's going to be a time to listen to what they are genuinely concerned about. And fully hearing what they're saying can be so much better in helping them work through whatever it is they have going on. We can't always fix everything. All right, next we have the anger arousal cycle. Now this is the trigger, leads to escalation, leads to the crisis, then to recovery, and then post-crisis. So this diagram demonstrates the typical process of the anger arousal cycle. Understanding this process will help us to better understand how to apply effective interventions and de-escalate residents before entering the crisis stage, hopefully. We'll explore this in more detail over the next few slides. So before we can examine how to apply interventions effectively, we first need an understanding of the basics of behavior in general. So we're going to seek to identify the trigger. right? Or the event that occurs prompting a response. What started the ball rolling, so to speak. And that leads to the behaviors. And the behavior is based on our belief systems. Our goal being to focus on the problem behaviors in addition to the underlying beliefs that prompted the particular response. Now, following each behavior comes some sort of a consequence or event that occurs after the response. If the behavior produces the desired outcome, it is more likely that the behavior will occur again in the future. So that gives us reinforcement. This slide reviews different considerations when we're looking at contributing factors to the trigger portion of problematic behaviors. So when looking to control triggers, we can focus on environmental triggers. And this would be things like noises, cleanliness, weather, temperature, personal space, the schedule, what's happening in the media. Next, pay close attention to your interactions. Things such as our tone of voice, verbal and body language, shaming, teasing, confrontation, or ignoring someone. And notice how these interactions are impacting the residents or others in the surrounding environment. And then that gives us patient-specific triggers. Now, these can include things like family contact, physical health, mental health, and trauma history. But in regard to trauma history, we don't always know what sounds, sights, smells, or interactions may trigger a trauma reaction for somebody. What are your triggers? Are there specific behaviors or specific individuals that can trigger you? And asking ourselves, how do we respond to others in a crisis? Our tone of voice, our nonverbal and emotional responses. And then how do we work with those around us? Do we know when to tag team? Like, do we know when to say when it's time for us to step away? We need a break. What's your communication style? And what are your strengths in a crisis? Just some things to consider when we're trying to de-escalate someone. Next, we have a wonderful video from Brene Brown, and she's going to give us a brief introduction into empathy.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. Yeah. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
All right, so applied empathy. What is it? It's made up of 4 basic principles. Number 1, stay out of the judgment zone. That's not our role. We're not here to judge, we're here to support. And number 2, take on the other person's perspective. Just take a moment and step into their shoes and attempt to see if you can understand where they're coming from. Third, recognize emotions, helping to clarify any emotions that the resident may be experiencing. And lastly, communicate what you notice or recognize back to them. We want to clarify, and they can clarify for us, but this is actually you stating what your understanding of the situation, which can also be referred to as reflective listening. So how does validation help us? For de-escalation to become effective, we need the person in crisis to feel heard or cared for before they're able to move on. Statements of validation and empathy allow a resident to feel heard and understood. Things like, I understand that you're frustrated with, or I see that you're feeling whatever, and it's okay for them to correct you, right, if you get it wrong. Or we can say, I'm so sorry that happened to you. Offering statements of assistance show that we care, that we're concerned. How can I help you with this? What can I do to make things better? What would help make you feel safe? So what are empathy blockers? Now, these are actions or beliefs that might have good intentions, but they almost always inevitably backfire. One-upping, my kid's smarter than your kid, right? Emotional educating, right? This could turn into a very positive experience for you if you would just relax, or you should listen to this podcast about that. Rescuing, oh, here, let me do that for you. Or storytelling. Oh my goodness, that reminds me of a time in high school when then it becomes about me, shutting down emotions, telling somebody, just cheer up, right? It'll be okay. We don't always know that. Sympathy. Oh, you poor thing. Or, oh, bless your heart. Correcting someone. That's not how it happened. This is how it happened. We want their perspective. And silver lining, that's that at least statements that was referred to in the video. At least your family comes to visit. Those things, and again, why we mean well, they're not always going to be effective. Next, we have a short clip that some of you may or may not recognize from a wonderful little movie called Inside Out. Inside Out is about Riley, an 11-year-old little girl, and her emotions as she's struggling to adjust to a big move in a new life. The movie highlights the idea that all emotions, even the difficult ones like sadness, are necessary for healthy development. Bing Bong is Riley's imaginary friend, and they used to fly to space. Here, he realizes that Riley is growing up and seems to be forgetting about him and their adventures.
No! No, 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 you can't take my rocket to the top! Riley and I are going to the moon! Riley can't be done with me.
Hey, it's gonna be okay. We can fix this. We just need to get back to headquarters. Which way to the train station?
I had a whole trip planned for us.
Hey, who's ticklish, huh? Here comes the tickle monster. Hey, Bing Bong, look at this. Oh, here's a fun game. You point to the train station and we all go there. Won't that be fun? Come on, let's go to the train station.
I'm sorry they took your rocket. They took something that you loved. It's gone. Forever.
Sadness. Don't make him feel worse.
Sorry.
It's all I had left of Riley.
I bet you and Riley had great adventures.
Oh, they were wonderful. Once we flew back in time, we had breakfast twice that day.
Sadness.
It sounds amazing. I bet Riley liked it.
Oh, she did. We were best friends.
Yeah, it's sad.
I'm okay now. Come on. The train station is this way.
The clip we just watched gives us a very simple but honest example of what empathy is in action. Empathy is one of the core principles of de-escalation. The core principles of de-escalation are to help your residents get back to baseline. We want to focus on staying in the moment, maybe by using box breathing or a coping skill surrounding the peak escalation of the person in crisis. After being in the moment, you should focus on the use of empathy, like we just saw in the videos. And the last principle we want to keep in mind is that escalation typically occurs, again, due to an individual's belief about a situation or activating event, not the event itself. So for someone to stop a certain behavior, they'll usually need to have an alternative behavior to engage in that will meet the same need. It's helpful to offer distractions or other ways to meet their expressed needs. Encourage residents to do an activity that you know they enjoy. That could be playing a game or working on a craft or just talking to somebody. We should also be teaching and reinforcing positive, healthy coping skills, proven effective skills like journaling, listening to music, or practice deep breathing. And don't forget to ensure that they have what they need to be able to practice whatever method they decide. For example, make sure they have writing supplies for journaling or a speaker or radio to be able to listen to music. So just some tips for staff. Um, know when to pick your battles with the individuals in your care. Like it doesn't matter who's right or wrong. The only thing that matters in the moment of crisis is everybody's safety, just resolving it for everyone's safety. And remember, we don't all share the same reality. Just because something seems insignificant to you, it may be important, very important to your resident. So you don't have to agree or approve of what your resident is stressed about. You only need to support them through their crisis because power dynamics will almost always escalate a situation further. Some tips for ensuring your safety and the safety of others. Ensure that there are no barriers between you and the exit. Always leave yourself an out, right? Try not to get yourself cornered. We keep equipment and any other staff or personnel clear in case a hasty exit becomes necessary. And when possible, try to have multiple exits. If there are two doorways into a room, just make sure there's a clear path to either. Provide extra space when you're approaching someone and don't get too close. We don't want to swarm the resident with multiple team members. That can be overwhelming and scary. Select one person to engage with that person while everybody else kind of hangs back a few feet, right? We don't want them to be intimidated or scared. Some more safety tips and tricks. We want to be open-minded and use non-judgmental language. An example of judgmental language would be telling somebody that's a stupid idea. Non-judgmental language might say, I'm having trouble understanding how that might work. Can you explain it to me? That invites more conversation. We use the terms static and dynamic to distinguish between factors that are fixed and those that are modifiable or that are subject to change. So identify static risk factors about the resident or those things that change slowly, like gender, age, criminal record, for example. We also want to identify dynamic risk factors about them. These are things that may change with intervention or may change on their own. Things like mood stability, substance use, financial situations, or family support. And we've spent time building trust and rapport, so now is the time to use it. You can help that resident stay safe and de-escalate. Next, we'll be discussing how we, as caregivers and staff, can impact whether a situation escalates or de-escalates. Residents rely on us to be that calm in the storm when they are agitated. And then always bearing in mind that our responses, how we react to a situation, that's going to make a difference in a situation de-escalating or escalating further. We want to recognize our own nonverbal cues and pay attention to those things, the things that we exhibit. And be mindful of how you are presenting yourself and your approach when somebody is escalated, right? Or on the verge of escalation. Think about each of these things as a whole and then when working with residents. Make a point of walking into a room in a relaxed state, right? Being at the same level as the person that you're speaking with. Um, just kind of walk in. If they're sitting, you can lean down, sit in a chair next to them, just be at their level. Don't make them feel like you're being rushed or in a hurry. You want to show a comforting approach because one is less likely to escalate when they feel safe and when they're not feeling threatened. Now think of what each of the following is able to communicate to someone. Body language. How we're standing with our arms crossed or tapping our feet, or are we in a relaxed position with our arms at our side? What does each say to somebody? What about facial expressions? A lot of times that's the first thing most people notice about us, right? So are we approaching with a smile or even just a relaxed facial expression, or are we scowling or frowning, just not looking overly approachable? What about touch? Touch can be tricky. If you have a resident who is upset and they're on the verge of escalating, if you have someone that there is a good relationship between them and that resident, a gentle touch can be a reassuring or calming for that person. But for somebody who has already escalated, that touch can be misconstrued as threatening, or they perceive it as, oh, okay, so we have permission to touch now. Let's touch. And then gestures. Avoid using exaggerated gestures. We don't want to wave our arms around and, just look all excited. And please refrain from finger pointing. Nobody likes to see that at them. There's no need for it. And then we have interpersonal spacing or proxemics. How close are you to the resident? So be respectful of their personal space. Be at their level, lean down or sit with them when possible. But at the same time, being too far away, that could cause trouble for somebody who doesn't hear or see very well. They may not be able to hear you correctly. And then our focus of attention. During interactions with residents, especially somebody who is escalating, your attention should be solely focused on them, not on the environment around them, not paying more attention to the TV in the room or looking at your phone. So our body language speaks volumes. Now, with that in mind, it's important to ensure that it matches our words, right? Now, this is how we can present ourselves as calm and that we're here to help. The average stress response, aka the limbic system, is 0.6 seconds on average. This is our fight, flight, and often forgotten freeze response. Our stress response time is based on a variety of things, including biological and environmental factors, as we pick up on cues within our surroundings. We want our hands to remain in the middle, like between our shoulders and our waist. We want no weapons hands. It's just open hands, relaxed, right? Now, there are some very easy techniques to aid in de-escalating a person. Some of those includes, as we just talked about, no weapons hands. Just make sure your hands are visible, hold them above your waist. We want to avoid hand evasion and closed fists, right? This indicates that we're ready to fight. Avoid, again, pointing our finger. We don't want to do that. And don't touch, because again, this gives an escalated person permission to defend themselves or become physical in response to you. Positive responses from staff can include things, but is not limited to acknowledging the emotion. Validation is key sometimes, like telling somebody, I know this is hard for you. Set limits or expectations, just letting an individual know that if they cross a certain physical boundary, what consequences are to follow based on your company's policy. Encourage a self-soothing skill or a breathing exercise. Demonstrate how to use it effectively. Ask them to join in and practice it with you. Use a YouTube video to facilitate the use and guidance of them. And self-disclosure, now that can be helpful at times, but this requires them being skillful of not to divulge too much personal information that could be weaponized or used against you later on. And be willing to negotiate or compromise in order to get to a partial agreement, right? Our goal here is to ensure resident safety, not to win, not to be right. Avoid telling them what to do and model what you need to see from them. Encourage them to follow your lead. You could even turn it into a game if it would help lighten the mood a little. right? We don't want to say things like sit down or don't do that, right? You could maybe sit down and ask them to join you. Some general physical and verbal recommendations found to be most effective in crisis de-escalation situations include maintaining a calm, quiet voice tone, using minimal amount of words, just short and sweet, give statements of validation, support, and clear direction, and don't try to reason with or immediately resolve the issue. This is not the time to problem solve. Now, this can be a team effort. If you're working with multiple people, one person can be verbally de-escalating the individual, while others remove other residents from the area or remove any potentially dangerous objects. And this is not the time to try to figure out what triggered the event or to resolve the issue. While that is important, it can wait for a bit. The priority during escalation is de-escalation. De-escalating that situation safely for everybody involved. The team can discuss what happened and how to prevent it later during a debrief. When speaking to an escalated person, it's not only what we say, but how we say it that determines what that person hears, right? So watch our tone. How we speak and convey information to residents can have a really big impact. Always ask and give information in a calming way, paying attention to your tone of voice. Speech tempo is defined as basically how fast you talk. Slow and calm is what we need during escalation. The cadence of someone's voice is the way their voice gets higher or lower as they speak. The concepts of tone, tempo, cadence, rhythm, and volume. The quality of voice also communicates different messages. How we say what we say can really make all the difference sometimes. Let's look at this phrase, I didn't say that. And how can we imply differently? I didn't say that. Well, that implies that somebody else did. Or I didn't say that. Putting the emphasis on say. That implies I didn't use those words, but that's what I meant. Or I didn't say that, implying that I said something, it just wasn't that, right? So how we say things matters. Some effective verbal interventions include utilizing rapport and applied empathy. Avoid the writing reflex. We are not here to solve their problems for them or give them answers. We're here to build capacity and encourage effective use of skills. And timing is everything. If we are unable to de-escalate before somebody reaches a certain point on their own emotional thermometer, it is likely they will further dysregulate. De-escalation utilizes already established rapport, not manipulation. Use support staff that are effective when working with that resident. Avoid bribing. And this rapport is achieved through the use of applied empathy over time. Remember, people don't care what you know until they know that you care. You want to ask for and use the person's name whenever possible. Expect, and when possible, accommodate rather than react to strong emotional responses. Ensure that the person is in a safe location or assist them to getting to one. Offer to go with them or be willing to help them get there. Protect the person from unnecessary exposure to additional circumstances that could cause additional distress. There may be a lot of people in the room. There's an audience now. Maybe the situation occurred in a common area. Help maintain their dignity and their privacy as much as possible. And that can also include securing items that might be used as a weapon. Provide direction that is clear and positive, oriented toward directing the person in what to do rather than what not to do, right? So, for example, instead of yelling, get out of the way, try, could you please move so the wheelchair doesn't run over you? See the difference? And when giving direction, we want to give the person something to do that distracts them, right? Have them assist you with a small task or ask them to do you a favor. People like to feel helpful. And if you must act firmly or abruptly when you're giving direction at your first opportunity, please just moderate the impact by returning to a calm voice, explain the importance of following your instructions, and emphasizing that that person's safety and protection are your foremost concern. Reinforced by promptly and positively acknowledging actions that did follow your directions. Now, these are some common boundaries to be mindful of. And please follow your facility's policy and procedures of what you can and cannot do with residents. Now, we'll discuss how some of these items can cause boundary issues. Boundaries are a vital component for our line of work. It keeps the professional nature of our relationship with residents so there's no confusion on their part. Boundaries. It is our responsibility to make sure that residents are not taken advantage of. Staff who get too close physically, touch residents who don't want to be touched, are at increased risk of physical assault as people jump to defending themselves. Sharing too much personal information with pathological residents risks the resident then using that to get to them or to their loved ones. This can be verbal attacks or actual physical danger. Socially, we have expectations of how professionals should act that differ from how people are allowed to act outside of the workplace. Our impression of staff becomes our impression of the company as a whole, because many times you may be that face that someone knows and then relates back to the facility. Be aware. Be aware of what we say and where we say it. We want to refrain from speaking negatively about our job duties and responsibilities, about our company or coworkers. Imagine if you or your loved one had to listen to the staff that was helping and supporting you or them complaining about their job, which is literally taking care of you or your loved one. How do you not take that personally? Right? Don't express negative personal opinions about the facility or the provider to or around the residents. This can cause concern for residents and their families, right? It can cause distrust because if the employees are talking about the facility like this, maybe they know something I don't. As human beings, we are not always going to get along with everybody. And that includes coworkers, supervisors, and that's just life, right? But when we're at work, that cannot be the case. We are being paid to maintain professionalism and respect. Negativity spreads, and complaining about peers or supervisors leads residents to get involved in any drama or arguments. Keep those personal comments, conversations, and opinions away from the residents. It's not their problem, and it should not be their concern. Talk about it on break, in your car, behind closed doors, for certain, anywhere residents are not. And if there are other or more serious personnel or work-related concerns, reach out to your supervisor or a member of management or bring it to the attention of HR to be addressed. Outside of work, in general, always follow the policies of your facility when it comes to interactions or socializing with residents outside of the workplace, and that includes social media. We should only be interacting at or during work hours unless otherwise approved by our supervisors. So if you see a resident outside of work, don't initiate a conversation with them, but let it be their choice. If they want to have a conversation with you, let them approach you. Employees are not to have any social media like Facebook or Instagram involvements with residents. Remember those boundaries that we talked about. No employee should ever borrow or lend money to residents for any reason. Borrowing or giving money or any type of personal property opens them up to vulnerability. And on that same note, it's never going to be a resident's responsibility to provide gas money to take them on an outing, as well as buying items from residents could potentially lead to suspicion of them being taken advantage of. And it is considered inappropriate for staff to give or receive gifts from residents or their families, even though the best of intentions normally from families are there. Always maintain professional boundaries with residents and their families. We should be forming mentoring and supportive relationships. We're not their friend or family. And when we share our personal information with residents, that implies an equal relationship. Giving out personal phone numbers or email addresses, having residents on your social media sites is normally forbidden. What constitutes an appropriate physical boundary depends in part upon an individual's life experience and cultural background. It's about what they are comfortable or not comfortable with. The professional nature of your relationship with a resident should be considered as well. Are you new to their care team, or is this someone that you've been working with for a long time that you know each other well? What constitutes an appropriate physical contact should continually be evaluated to ensure that it's suitable for each individual served. And this is team directed, guardian approved. For example, handshakes, fist bumps, or elbow bumps instead of hugs. We should model and maintain appropriate physical behavior with individuals served, which also reinforces professional boundaries with them. Touching a resident in the course of daily living skills or required assistance, like bathing, dressing, or toileting, for example, is completely acceptable. Become familiar with your company policy on physical contact with residents, usually only in response to imminent threat. Inappropriate touching in general is never okay. Some more serious examples of inappropriate physical contact might include full body hugs, kissing, touching of genital and chest areas, tickling, piggyback rides, wrestling, isolating individuals in any way, or any type of massage. Any physical contact that makes an individual uncomfortable is not acceptable. So, breathing techniques and self care. It's important that we, as caregivers and staff, can take care of ourselves by practicing self care. Um, think of our minds. Give ourselves peace of mind. Read a book, take a class, walk in nature. And then our bodies, keeping ourselves healthy and fit. Any kind of movement is wonderful. Exercise, yoga, just being social, spending time with others. And then being face to face with a conversation, shoulder to shoulder with a person working on a project, or ear to ear talking with somebody on the phone. Thank you for joining us today to talk about de-escalation and ways that we can help residents before, during, and after a crisis.